Hi there. Check out this clip taken from my latest conversation with Deb Fillman on the Engineering Politics Podcast number 36 titled Institutional Corruption. You can get the full episode on my YouTube channel, or even better yet, by subscribing to my Locals community at engineeringpolitics.locals.com. And while you're on Locals subscribing to all of these wonderful creators, make sure to support and join Deb's community at thereasonwelearn.locals.com. All right, let's get to it. Cue the music. I don't want to make this about Pride Month. I have my own views, coming from a practicing Catholic. I'm not a good Catholic, but I'm trying to get better every day.
Right.
So, my views on homosexuality and stuff like that, I have friends who are gay. I know that's always the cop out, but that doesn't bother me, but pride does bother me. I think that's something that is not desirable in the community. That's the reason why it's one of the 7 deadly sins. With that is this sense of entitlement of not only educators feeling that they must step in as the parental figure in your kids' lives, but now we're starting to see corporations try to do the same thing, or trying to play their part. And, the incentives behind that is not the same as being a teacher, having that power complex, but it's sometimes, I think, them trying to make sure they stay out of the spotlight of the outrage mob. But when it comes to Pride Month, there's a certain point at which you don't teach your kids about sexuality and sexual orientation, because they're just too young to understand that. They got to understand other things to build the competency to understand that. But there's been recent examples of, take like Blue's Clues, for example. They did a whole thing where they had an animated drag queen singing about different types of families. There's a certain point where that's probably not appropriate anymore. I mean, we can go into the origins of drag queens. To me, a drag queen is overtly sexual. It's a man trying to accentuate the sexual features of a woman. Therefore, it's sexual. I know there's other reasons they do it, and I'm not trying to just poo-poo on drag queens, but there's a certain point at which this is probably not, or should not be, desirable by the society as a whole. And I'm just wondering, your take as being a previous educator, or an ex-educator, however you want to label yourself there. Like, how do you see, this type of Pride Month indoctrination and exposing these kids to this, something they probably shouldn't learn about until, a more advanced age? Like, how do you see this playing out?
I kind of go back to, one of those premises I said, where the school feels like it's their job to impart all the values and all the, sort of all the things that your child should think about the world and all the people in it, that's their role to play, and that they know what the one right way to do that is. I think it's incredible hubris that they do that. I think it's intrusive. And as a parent, I resent the living hell out of it. I mean, that is my job, especially with very young children. I get to decide when my child is, or I and my child, because I think kids start asking questions, and that's an interaction. But your child will begin to let you know when they have questions, and you can address them as you see fit. But it's for you to do, and that's that intimate relationship where you can feel out, because they are your child. You can feel out how far you can go. I use the example of, I asked my parents. My youngest brother was 18 years younger. So I had this strange, pseudo parental relationship. But I remember when he was like 3, and I heard some giggling coming from my parents' room, and I saw my brother go back up the stairs, and I went and said, what's going on? And they said I was home from college or something. They said, well, he just came down and asked us where babies come from. So I said, okay, how do you guys do that? I'm 21 years old. I'm like, wow, why do you do that? And they said, well, we just answered this question with the simplest answer we could give, to as far as he would go and accept it. Right. So I said, what'd you say? They said, mommies and daddies. Mommies and daddies make the baby. And he was satisfied with that. He was 3. He's like, oh, so mommies and daddies make the babies. Together. We did it together. Okay. And he went back upstairs. Now, it wasn't all that long, a few more months. He came back in but how exactly, how do they do it? Right. And then they went a little farther, but still not that much farther. They said like plants a seed or something, very basic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's satisfying for like a good 2 years. Okay. So like they got to plants a seed and then 2 more years went by. So I'm not going to go through the whole story, but the point of it is that parents ought to be the judge of like how much, how little, when, what about, and it doesn't have to be sexual. Okay. So sometimes they're more interested in knowing their origin story, like where did I come from? And they don't really start asking the sexual stuff more until they're quite a bit of like tween years. And to a certain extent, they think it's icky. They're like, I have my last teenager just turned to a teenager and she's still like, like, I don't want to think.
It's a fun conversation with your parents. Right?
Yeah. It's like, ew. Like they know stuff, but they're just like, they don't really want to talk about it. Right. And they don't want to see it. They don't want to see it in movies. They just don't want to at that age. And that we're not talking littles. We're talking, 10, 11, 12. They're just like, ugh, do they have to? So when I see things like Blue's Clues, they're talking about different kinds of families. Here's the problem with it. I don't get the impression that they're doing it so that kids will be understanding of other kids who have different families. First of all, I don't see that that's a driving need. In other words, we have teeny tiny percentages of families that are that esoteric. I mean, some of the ones in that Blue's Clues show were like, really out there combinations. Yeah. Not even just 2 mommies and 2 daddies. It was pretty out there.
Yeah, some pansexual.
Yeah, there was some stuff that I don't even know a kid would even know to notice that if it's not visible to the naked eye. There's a bunch of 2 daddies and 2 mommies. So like why you think you need to show this to preschoolers is beyond me, but whatever. It's terminology now that they're not going to understand, that half the parents can't even explain to them. And so they put that out there to address, like one of those, a solution in search of a problem. I don't see that that's a big problem. I don't think little kids are going, you have a weird family. Oh my God, I'm frozen again. Is it working? Okay.
You're good now.
If your goal is just understanding and being kind, which really, that's what they claim, then you talk about being kind to people. You don't show all the examples of where you need to be kind. You just generically talk about it. If people are different from you and live different ways from you, you still have to be kind to them and you still have to be respectful of them. And we treat people with decency and dignity and like foundational values, okay, principles. But they seem to be doing something different. And what I see is what they're doing is saying they're normalizing something. They're not saying this is included also. It's more like, this is extra cool. That's what it seems like to me. This is extra cool and awesome and interesting and different and colorful and amazing and all kinds of things. All these other choices, like as opposed to this occurred and this was their natural, like this is how people live and you just need to be kind to people. It feels a lot more like, and there's this and that, and it, choose this, choose that. And the one thing you really don't see a lot of inclusion of is a regular family, a regular nuclear family, mom and dad.
The nuclear family.
So sure. It starts to feel after a while like all of this is cool, but that's less cool.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like what they claim it is, and what they claim it is, it isn't. So my take on it is it's inappropriate. It's a violation of the children's innocence to slip it into a Blue's Clues show, which kids sit and watch, parents go, hey, watch Blue's Clues. I mean, that was an ambush.
Yeah.
That's not what anyone who thinks otherwise. I mean, that's not what Blue's Clues is ever about. And the parents now are in the position of having to explain to their children either why they can't watch it if they heard about it beforehand. Now it's like, what do I say why you can't watch this episode? Or now the kid's going to hear it from their other friends. And it's just not, it's very obviously intended to get between the parents and their kids. And then people say, well, then don't let your kids watch it. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not that easy.
That is an impossible task to screen every kid show. I mean, as much as I enjoy watching children's shows, it's
cool.
impossible. It's an impossible task.